I wanted to talk about this most recent Hill Rising reaction to Tucker Carlson's writer who resigned for racist comments. I don't know why this would be a surprise to anybody that Tucker Carlson's main writer, Mr. Blake Neff, why he has made some, as Fox News has said, which is the irony of that, he's made horrendous and deeply offensive racist, sexist and homophobic comments under a pseudonym on a forum auto-admit. You know, they've asked for his resignation. I mean, Fox News really is, it's full of xenophobic, racist commentary. That's what it is. And it's, you know, it's propping up Donald Trump at every turn. And Tucker Carlson, I've talked about this in another video, how he seems to be some sort of referential point for Rising. And Rising is supported by one of Donald Trump's friends. And Rising is trying to bring what it calls the new left and the new right together, as if we have things in common, as if the left has things in common with the right. There might be a couple of things that the left has in common with the right, like the recognition that corporations are running things, running the show. We also might have a couple of other things that we recognize that is oppressing people in general. But that's where it ends, and the solutions of the right are very, very different to the left. The right might want social equality for white people, but they don't have much regard for minority groups, LGBT people, etc. So that's where it ends. And for some reason, Rising seems to often refer to Tucker Carlson. And I'm not really sure if there's bad faith there somewhere between with Saagar Enjeti and Crystal Ball. Crystal Ball is supposedly the left person, and Saagar Enjeti is the right. And Saagar Enjeti seems to just really have great respect for Tucker Carlson. He seems to ignore what Tucker Carlson has said in the past. You know, this writer for the Tucker Carlson show or whatever, it should be no surprise that he's a racist, misogynist, homophobe. Because the stuff that Tucker Carlson talks about is racist, homophobic, misogynist. I mean, let's have a look at what Tucker Carlson has talked about. Tucker Carlson is the individual that Saagar Enjeti from this supposedly progressive show, The Rising, seems to have great respect for. So let's have a listen to what Tucker Carlson said in 2006 about women.
You know what, in my brief experience, you know what gets women going is arguing with them.
Really?
Yeah.
I did not, Brad, I never use that.
It's true. You debate politics with a woman and just go, just full-blown out there, especially feminism. If you're talking to a feminist and she's giving you, men really need to be more sensitive and this, actually men don't need to be more sensitive. You just need to be quiet and kind of do what you're told.
And lighten up a little bit, bitch.
They love it.
Alexis Stewart, we run into her all the time.
She seems
Cunt.
awful.
Yeah, she is awful.
They're very cunty.
She seems extremely
I like
cunty.
to hear that word out of, I stepped over me. She seems, what? Now go ahead.
She just does seem a little cunty. Yeah. I mean, you said it. I'm just agreeing with you. I don't use that word because
right. I'd love for Tucker Carlson tonight on MSNBC, a girl that comes across kind of cunty.
Well, she does. I mean, I heard her. Now I'm a Brent fan, so okay, I'm stating my bias right out front here. But I heard her on with him, and I just wanted to give her the spanking she so desperately
I actually
needs.
watched.
When she's laying her head in your bed at night, you know who the hell's in her bedroom and what they're doing. Nobody, just her. Well, when she's in a dormitory-type setting and these little girls start experimenting around, next thing you know, you got a lesbian on your hands.
I don't think that's likely.
Next thing you know, Brad, what's going on in the Combe dormitory? Nothing. I don't got a PSP to play. I ain't got nothing going on. I ain't got my mom and dad here to tell me that they love me and tuck me in bed. So here's Trixie, and she wants to explore my body a little bit. So, hey, let's go crazy. Wow.
That if it weren't my daughter,
that's one theory.
Well, I mean, it's
I just can't, and
Manson,
I just think that's pretty unlikely.
Can you tell him, as outlandish as that is, how old is your daughter?
14.
Well, I love women, but they're extremely primitive. They're basic. They're not that hard to understand.
Putting Paris and Brittany in a commercial with Obama is classic old school miscegenation, old South.
Uncle Tom.
It's old South.
Are you serious?
These two young white girls are going to be dating a black
trying to
man.
say that he's coming for your pristine white daughters by putting
that's
two of
not-
the biggest white whores in America?
You want to fuck Sarah Palin?
You want to
Well,
talk about?
there's that. There is that. I'll agree with that.
I feel sorry for unattractive women. I mean, there's nothing they did, you know?
What's better than hockey, weed, and whores? I mean,
But first of all, there's no Canadian woman that you'd want to pay to sleep with. Anybody who answers my trophy wife is my favorite possession is my hero. I don't give a shit. I'm voting for the guy.
Well, that's fabulous. So that's just a little snippet of Tucker Carlson, what he says in public. I'm not sure what happens in private.
For that, Warren Jeffs didn't marry underage girls.
no, he's in prison for facilitation of child rape.
Whatever the hell that means.
That means
he's in prison. He's in prison because he's weird and unpopular, and he has a different lifestyle that other people find creepy.
No, he's an accessory to the rape of children. That is a felony, and a serious one at that.
What do you mean an accessory? He's got some weird religious cult where he thinks it's okay to, marry underage girls, but he didn't do it. Why wouldn't the guy who actually did it, who had sex with an underage girl, he should be the one who's doing life? The rapist in this case has made a lifelong commitment to live and take care of the person. So it is a little different. I mean, let's just be honest about it. He's not accused of touching anybody. He is accused of facilitating a marriage between a 16-year-old girl and a 27-year-old man. That's the accusation. That's what they're calling felony rape.
But in our state,
that's bullshit. I'm sorry. Now, this guy may be a total creep, maybe a child rapist. I'm just telling you that arranging a marriage between a 16-year-old and a 27-year-old is not the same as pulling a stranger off the street and raping her. That's bullshit.
This may be a lot of things, this moment we're living through, but it is definitely not about Black lives. And remember that when they come for you, and at this rate they will. Anyone who's ever been subjected to the rage of the mob knows the feeling. It's like being swarmed by hornets. You cannot think clearly. And the temptation is to panic. But you can't panic. You've got to keep your head and tell the truth. Tell the truth. If you show weakness of any kind, they will crush you. The indiscriminate use of violence by mobs is a threat to every American of all colors and backgrounds and political beliefs. Democracy cannot exist when people are rioting. Rioting is a form of tyranny.
Tucker Carlson and Saagar Enjeti have some commonalities in that Saagar Enjeti and Tucker Carlson both promote anti-Chinese propaganda. Saagar Enjeti probably doesn't do it as much as Tucker Carlson, but I think it would be, he's throwing it in there amongst everything to normalize it. And it's so strange that Crystal Ball doesn't seem to jump on that at all. He just seems to, regularly as possible without it becoming really apparent, he throws in anti-Chinese stuff. I don't see him particularly criticizing U.S. empire very much. And this China in the crosshairs of the U.S. empire is something that is becoming more and more pronounced every single day. And the mainstream media are ramping up the anti-Chinese propaganda, which is leading to violence against Asians throughout the world. And Tucker Carlson is leading the charge of the anti-Chinese propaganda. There's nothing new about Saagar Enjeti. There's nothing new about his so-called right populist position. He's just lending and tipping his hat to sort of imperialism. He's tipping his hat to white nationalists like Tucker Carlson. And that should be something that should, basically talking about cancel culture, that should basically write him off as someone not to be taken seriously. In fact, only taken seriously in the fact that he's in many ways as dangerous as Tucker Carlson, in that he's putting forth imperialist narratives by the national security state about China, and he's also trying to normalize some of the positions. He's not talking about the solutions that the right has for minority groups, which is not good. He's talking about some basic commonalities that the right and the left might have. But he's not talking about really that's where it ends. And I feel like they're trying, as I've mentioned before and as other commentators have mentioned before, they're sort of trying to normalize these right-wing talking points in a way, or normalize making out as if there's nothing, that the right and the left have commonalities and that we should be working together. The right is not going to include minority groups. They're not going to. They're not going to include disenfranchised groups. They don't care about Black Lives Matter. They don't care about all these issues that they don't care about the solutions for any of the problems. And so, and I can't believe how many times I've heard him referring to Tucker Carlson. And Crystal Ball seems to just kind of, she'll very softly address those issues and kind of push back a bit. But why on earth is she even on the same stage with him? And one has to wonder what is behind this whole show, really. Sweeping up disenfranchised Bernie Sanders supporters. Anyway, let's just have a look at this, what they say on Rising, and then I'll wrap it up.
And deeply offensive racist, sexist, and homophobic comments under a pseudonym on the forum AutoAdmit. We want to make abundantly clear Fox News strongly condemns this behavior. And yeah, I mean, this story made me particularly sad to see, mostly because I think it was very irresponsible behavior, continuing to engage in like ridiculous conduct like this while maintaining, being an employee for Tucker and for Fox. Really,
honestly, does he really think that this is an accident, that they didn't know that this man, Mr. Neff, has these sort of views? He's a lead writer for the Tucker Carlson Tonight show, whatever it's called. I mean, seriously, does he really? What is he talking about?
Really validating here, I think, the most bad faith critiques against Tucker Carlson, and I think that was actually what makes me the most sad.
Validating the most bad faith critiques of Tucker Carlson. What bad faith critiques are they? The guy, Tucker Carlson, has called white supremacy a hoax. He's repeatedly made racist, homophobic, and explicitly misogynist remarks. He's heard in an audio recording in 2006 attacking Iraqis and saying they are semi-illiterate, primitive monkeys.
About this. This is just an easy way in order to tag the show and so much of the beliefs in politics and so much more than that as just explicitly racist and something that they can't ever engage with. When I truly believe that.
Oh my God, it is explicitly racist. Look at the look on Crystal Ball's face. I mean, seriously, anybody, any journalist worth there who really has a real left position just wouldn't want to sit next to a guy who is defending the Tucker Carlson hour. Seriously.
That most of the people who behave like this and who are part of a movement that I purport to be part of as well, they hide it secretly for a reason. And I think that this reactionary tendency is definitely not the norm. And look, part of the reason why I work here and do what we do and do this show with you is explicitly to make it so that there is a space in order, I wouldn't call it an off-ramp, but just an alternative which does not dabble in this kind of reactionary mentality and online. And that's one of the things I love most about hearing from people who watch this show and who are on the right and who I've met actually before, who come up to me and tell me, I used to dabble in some really bad stuff. And I just felt like everybody was out to get me. And it's really just easy to get sucked into these types of things, really reactionary conspiracy theory mentality. But like your show just really showed me like who the true enemies were, which is capital in our society. And about,
I don't know, maybe white supremacists and white nationalists might be a true enemy as well. A true enemy of minority groups and black people, something which Tucker Carlson is a white nationalist, the most overt white nationalist probably at the present time on Fox News.
How the ways that we can go about creating, something more equitable. And so that's something that I love hearing. And yeah, I think this is terrible. And I'm particularly aggrieved that, validating the worst critiques against him.
Validating the worst critiques against Tucker Carlson. You only have to look online. Just do a quick search to see what he says about women, to see what he says about Ilhan Omar. He's constantly having a go at Ilhan Omar because he's Muslim. He can barely stand the fact that she's actually in public office. That he can't stand it and he has to attack her. He's Islamophobic. I've in the very few times that I've tuned in to him, he said some outrageous things. So I can't imagine if I couldn't stomach to watch this guy, Tucker Carlson, every night. But it's sort of amazing how many left commentators mention this guy when his history is so appalling.
When I really don't believe that it's true, that's what really bothers me.
Well, and you and I differ because I do believe it's true, and I believe it's a completely legitimate criticism. I mean, some of the things that they were posting about on the board, some of the worst stuff, made it into his monologues as, you know, either directly or as coded language. And so what is the critique of Tucker? It's essentially that, look, you put a little bit of gloss on this and say that, you know, in your heart you are, you know, vehemently against racism. I don't know what's in Tucker's heart. I think that's sort of beside the point.
You don't have to know what's in his heart. It's what's coming out of his mouth. I'm glad that she sort of, did some sort of a critique there. But look at the look on Saagar Enjeti's face. Is he that clueless that he doesn't understand that this man's a white nationalist?
The point is that clearly there was a direct line between this really racist, conspiratorial, like white supremacist thinking and what is put into the show and what is put into the monologues, which is then used by the President of the United States. So it's not like, oh, this was, I can't believe that this happened. It's just one bad individual. No, it doesn't legitimate bad faith attacks. It actually provides evidence that those attacks were founded and, based in reality.
Well, okay.
That's the real issue.
Just
here.
because something was posted on a forum. If a forum has 10,000 words, 3,000.
Does this guy have any idea of history? I mean, or is he just only taking the most recent thing that's happened? I mean, does he not look at what Tucker Carlson has said in the past, has been saying for a long, long time? Didn't Tucker Carlson start the Daily Caller?
Some are racist, and some of it ends up in a monologue. Like, that doesn't mean that the monologue itself is incorrect. So look, again.
Oh, I see. So Tucker Carlson isn't responsible for repeating back what has been written for him. He just takes whatever that person gives to him, whatever Mr. Neff had given to him to read out for the evening. He just does it without question. Really? Does Mr. Saagar Enjeti really believe that?
I don't even know what the Easter eggs or whatever. I don't want to read this website. I have no desire to do it. Or even in the reporting, nothing that they pointed to that was explicitly racist or whatever is what ended up in a monologue or coded or whatever. It seemed more like it was like, hey, I'm on this forum. There are going to be Easter eggs in this monologue. And again, I think that's egregious behavior. But I do think most of it is bad faith, which is, look, you're not allowed in this country. I mean, I'm a brown man and I get called a white supremacist for thinking.
You can be a white supremacist and you can be a black man too. Barack Obama used to promote white supremacy. Hello?
Thinking that there should be less immigration and competition for wages in this country, which is so ridiculous. This is the part of
it that I hate about.
There's no analysis really beyond a few commonalities between the left and the right. Seriously, somebody needs to debate this guy. Really debate him. Just really get him to explain where he thinks this new right, new left commonality is going.
Look, I mean, I've talked about, how I view Tucker Carlson on the show, and I give him credit when he's right about things, when he's independent-minded about things. But, the monologues about immigrants being dirty and the fear-mongering about, they're going to indoctrinate our children, and the attacks on Ilhan Omar, the attacks on Tammy Duckworth now, I mean, those things are legitimately ugly and disgusting. And this is like a window into where that comes from. Now, what I'll agree with you on, and what to me is a shame about this, and why it is, I'm not delighted to see this either, is because there are people in this country who, I'm not talking about elites here, I'm not talking about the commentariat, I'm not talking about Tucker, but there are a lot of people in this country who have.
Why do these people keep calling him Tucker like he's a good friend? Seriously. If somebody is just an overt racist, which I think she recognizes, and she doesn't think it's an accident these things end up in his monologues, why on earth is she calling him Tucker like he's some mate of hers?
Genuine reasons for holding a lot of the views that you hold, right? And non-racist reasons, right? Non-bigoted reasons. And look, none of us are perfect. All of us have problematic ideas and some.
Oh, none of us are perfect. I mean, what's wrong with white nationalism? I mean, Hitler wasn't perfect. And he wore a really great uniform. It was really snappy. It had silver little SS lightning bolts on it. They were very attractive. I mean, if he wanted to wipe out the Jews and kill millions of Jews, nobody's perfect. Tucker Carlson. He wants a war on China. He's for imperialism all over the world, which means killing millions and millions of black and brown people. And if he had his way, lots and lots of Chinese people too. But nobody's perfect. Nobody's perfect, are they, Crystal?
Extent or another. There are a lot of people who genuinely voted for Donald Trump and support a restrictionist immigration policy that doesn't come from a racist or bigoted place. And so what I...
Well, now that's totally wrong, because usually when people want immigration reduced or banned or blocked or whatever, reduced, it's usually a white nationalist position. That's usually what's behind it.
Hate about this is so much of the left, so much of liberal commentary seeks to completely discredit not just like the Tuckers of the world, who I actually think should be fairly discredited, but seeks to discredit like half the country. And that's why when I see something like this, it gives ammunition not just to undercutting anything that Tucker is saying, but undercutting the sort of good faith of half the country.
Surely there has to be somebody else these two can refer to besides Tucker fucking Carlson. Seriously. What about Chris Hedges? What about Cornel West? What about, there's a number of people that they could interview about these issues, or about why on earth are they picking a white nationalist to refer to, and ignoring all the hideous things that he's saying. The hideous Islamophobia, the hideous xenophobia, the hideous racism, the hideous misogyny and sexism. He's leading the culture war against the left. And what on earth is she talking about? He's pushing for a war against China. He's leading the charge for that. So why on earth would either of these tossers, I'm sorry, but why on earth would either of these people, I can understand why the guy on the right does promote Tucker Carlson, because he also is promoting anti-Chinese propaganda, and he also he's obviously putting out national security state talking points like Tucker Carlson. I don't know whether Tucker Carlson's going to run for office. I wouldn't be surprised if he does one day run for the President of the United States, and I wouldn't be surprised if Saagar Enjeti ends up in his cabinet. Seriously, that's my feeling. I know that's completely speculative, but that's sort of the feeling I get. I'm sorry, he's just sucking up to Tucker Carlson at every turn and making excuses for him and pretending like he doesn't have a history. It's bewildering to me that Crystal Ball, who says she's for the left, she was promoting Bernie Sanders and stuff. Why on earth she continues to sort of say that he has something to offer anybody who's seriously on the left?
And that just makes us all worse off.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think, look, this is the other issue I have with this particular thing, which is that there's a direct pipeline from some of the most reactionary left boards than there is to the media in much of justification of violence. Same with a lot of left commentary. Many people who I've sometimes talked to on this show, I think their views are abhorrent and insane. And yet,
who would that be?
And I know exactly where these things come from. I'm a child of the internet, and I never see anybody who has to denounce them, or they get any sort of the same level of criticism. And that's frankly why I'm loath to even talk about most of this, because I know it's BS. I know that 99% of the time,
this is not BS.
Well, look, again,
we try to be fair on this
BS
show.
Whenever I see these same people, I see AOC out there spouting nonsense, which I also see born on Reddit in these stupid online, discussions about how people are shooting each other for bread.
But let me give an example.
Stupid.
The criticism of Ilhan Omar, for example, is that she's anti-Semitic, which I think, to me is an outlandish and unfounded claim. This would be the equivalent of if her chief speaker...
And the reason Ilhan Omar is being called anti-Semitic is because she's called out apartheid Israel. She's called out how Palestinians are being slaughtered and, sniped at the Great March of Return. Paraplegics, children. Medics the snipers have been shooting them in the past at the Great March of Return. And of course, it's just a nightmare for Palestinians in apartheid Israel. That's why she's being hammered. And the Democratic Party is bought by the AIPAC, by the Israel lobby, as the GOP are.
Speechwriter, right, whose words she read like verbatim, was secretly posting about, we need...
Because, by the way, the new anti-Semitism, even according to to the Labour Party in the UK, is that if you call out apartheid Israel, that makes you anti-Semitic. That's the new sort of guidelines for what anti-Semitism is. It's just appalling.
To exterminate the Jews and like the worst anti-Semitic content. And you would lose your, I would call it like, it would rightfully be massive outrage about that. And it wouldn't just say something about that person. It would say something about Ilhan Omar, and it would provide legitimacy and a basis to the attacks on her, which I see as in bad faith. But if that was something that came out, you'd have to say, oh, there is something else going on here. So it's a legitimate story. It's a big deal. And for people who are wondering, like, what is going on in this moment and what are the roots of that and what are the implications for our society, I think it's important to talk about
Sure.
and cover.
Look, I'm very glad that we are talking about it because it is important to get
Now he's going to have a go at Ilhan Omar
out there. But the same thing did happen with Ilhan Omar. Not to that level. Ilhan Omar has associated with some really terrible people. She has been caught on camera talking with professors who are like justifying Al-Qaeda violence and equating them with people with the United States Army. So yeah.
Has she? I don't know.
I didn't see any of the same level of outrage.
There was a lot of.
And does that justify what Tucker Carlson had constantly having a go at Ilhan Omar? Whatever, basically he can't stand the fact that a Muslim is in Congress. Can't stand it.
Coverage of that on the right.
Yeah,
there was a lot of coverage of that on the right.
Show me one MSNBC segment about it. There won't be a single one.
Loosely associating or being, I can't even remember exactly what the stories were.
Or some people did
very
something.
Different from this is your lead writer who has been crafting your words that you've been reading on the show night after night that are picked up from the president. So I don't think that there's an equivalency between those two, but certainly agree that, they should be treated in an equal manner where this sort of racism and bigotry erupts.
Yeah, I think that that's right. And look, I'm happy to denounce it. I think it's terrible. And I think that the way...
He's happy to denounce the speechwriter, but he won't denounce Tucker Carlson, who is okay with what he's writing for him, and that he is not happy to denounce Tucker Carlson's racist, Islamophobic, xenophobic past, the imperialist narrative that Tucker Carlson keeps pushing, the warmongering, the racist stuff against the Black Lives Matter movement. He's not going to denounce that. He's just going to denounce the speechwriter.
That the way that this all needs to play out is what we try, and I try here so hard to do. And I don't think I'm winning, by the way. Like, I don't think this is a popular position to have, right?
Yeah, it's so funny.
Which is to try and channel it towards something that's more productive and towards egalitarianism rather than towards reactionary politics. It's very difficult. And I think that a lot of people out there feel very under siege and they gravitate towards things like this, which I am against, but I understand, both left and right.
If he was against what that speechwriter was talking about or racist politics or whatever, he wouldn't keep referring to Tucker Carlson all the time and tipping his hat to him. And the same goes for Crystal Ball. And right at the end of this, she says, well, we'll just have to see what Tucker has to say about all this. Who cares what Tucker Carlson has to say about it? I think he's been very clear, his position. It's just astonishing. I find this show to be really head-scratchingly strange. And the reason I'm paying attention to this, and I've done a couple of videos on this now, is because I actually feel it's got an insidious... There's a bad faith thing behind this whole show. There's a manipulation that they're trying to sweep up disenfranchised Bernie Sanders supporters, and they're trying to conflate these two movements and also normalize some talking points. And, why on earth would somebody who's a friend of Donald Trump be so supporting a show like this if there wasn't something to gain from this? I just have to wonder, and I don't know what the hell. I don't know what Crystal Ball is doing, but you really have to wonder
about how disaffection can lead to justification of terrible behavior. We had that documentarian on who did the incel documentary. I thought that was the perfect example about how societal conditions can shape you towards abhorrent, terrible behavior and ideology.
So I think we should probably think about patriarchy and the toxic masculinity and misogyny that is rampant throughout society, and that incel culture is just an expression of that.
And I think it's not excusing. People have agency. This is somebody who has agency, and they can be blamed and they suffer consequences for that type of behavior. But if you're not having a bigger discussion about what goes on beyond that, then I think that we're losing the point there.
Yeah, and also
let's have a bigger discussion about Tucker Carlson then, and not just focus on something that has happened 5 minutes ago. Let's actually look at his past and see the sort of crap that's come out of his mouth in the last few years, and since 2006 particularly.
If you're just looking to say this one person is bad, it kind of goes against the whole idea that there are structural systemic dynamics.
Which is what I really believe in. So,
and we'll see what Tucker says about it on his show tonight.
Broken clock is right twice a day. Let's see what words of wisdom Tucker has to say.